Right, I'm going to kick off. Thanks for joining me on this lovely sunny, well, certainly in Joburg, sunny Friday afternoon. I'm going to, without further ado, I'm going to go to my presentation, and just to confirm that all of you can see that.
Yes.
Perfect. Right. So my name is Hekkie from Westhuizen. For those of you who I haven't met, I have a PhD in personal and professional leadership, and it's an honor today to share with you my thoughts on how to unbusy your life, increasing personal productivity. And you guys must just please excuse me, as I see a lot of people are entering now, so I'm just admitting everybody as I go along. So I run an organization called Soldati, where we believe in growing leaders and impacting results, mainly focusing on consulting to companies and assisting them to optimize their leadership development processes, but then also linked to that, involved in implementing a lot of other leadership development interventions at those companies that are our clients. There's my details. Welcome to contact me afterwards. I will be the pleasure to chat to you also around leadership development. There's a couple of housekeeping issues before we get stuck into the detail. Like I said, thank you for joining me. Please, if you wouldn't mind muting, I'm very happy if you keep your cameras on. And obviously, if you ask a question, unmute. We'll be busy for more or less 25 minutes, and I'll allow for 5 minutes Q&A. Obviously, welcome to insert some comments into the chat box. But when it gets to questions, I would prefer it if we can ask the questions at the end, because I don't want to skip or miss anybody's question. As you've realized, the session is recorded. Please mail me if you would like a copy of this session, the video recording that I do. I'll gladly send it to you via WeTransfer, and maybe you want to send it to somebody else on your side as well. Right, just some leadership trends. If I can kick off as part of the introduction, leadership trends that I've seen over the last couple of months in mentoring and business coaching engagements with clients of mine. And unfortunately, we don't have time to do breakaway rooms or online surveys in a 30-minute session. But on your own, I would like to invite you to, when I share this with you on the next slide, to ask yourself and do some self-reflection. Hold up that mirror and ask yourself, how are you doing in terms of these three trends that I see when I have these engagements with clients and their developing leaders? So first of all, leaders do not make enough time to reflect, also to see where they can improve their lives. That's the first trend that I pick up in these engagements. Secondly, the capacity of leaders to cope with increasing demands that are placed on them seems to be fading. And then the last one I would like to share with you is there's certainly not enough attention given to increasing personal productivity as one of the coping mechanisms that we can use to get through life, the VUCA world that we're currently operating in. So I think in the context of what I just mentioned, two things to consider. First of all, how do I unbusy my life? And then also, what do I do to cope, like I said earlier. So there's two things that I think are important and that I would like to share with you today. The first one is normalizing our workload. The second one is, how do we increase our capacity? Our personal capacity as individuals to be able to cope better. The reality is, and I'm sure you would agree with me, that if we ignore these, then our workload is going to get to such a point, assuming that our personal capacity is not dropping, that we're going to reach the point of crash and burn. And that's obviously something we can't afford, and we don't want to find ourselves in. So what do? Let's first look at normalizing our workload and trying to share with you a couple of tips, techniques, methods that I found to work in my life in order to be able to succeed in this area. First one is delegate. It's an area that I've been battling for a very long time in my life. And I think the penny dropped for me when I read in a book this quote at some point in my career, where Andy Stanley says, only do what only you can do. And bearing in mind that we don't need to necessarily have people reporting into our structures in order to be able to delegate. I recently finished a lovely book from Keith Ferrazzi called Leading Without Authority, where he talks about the concept of co-elevation and specifically describing how do we delegate if we don't have anybody in our structures, but to people that are part of our network and also part of our organizations. So the point is, if we don't delegate, then we're doing a couple of injustices. We're not doing only injustice to ourselves and to our families, because then we become, if we can't delegate, we become one of those guys that are on the beach fielding 5 to 10 calls per day while we're supposed to be spending quality time on holiday with our families. But we're also certainly doing an injustice to the people that report into our structures, because we don't allow them to grow and to develop. One of the biggest things in relationships is trust. And if you're not willing to delegate to people, the message that you send to them is that I don't trust you. In life, in general, we juggle balls. All right, we're juggling glass balls, we're juggling rubber balls as two categories, I believe, from a career point of view, a hobby point of view, a family point of view, and I can carry on. Those glass balls are the things that we don't want to drop. Typically, those are the things that we want to keep to ourselves. The rubber balls we can drop if we delegate it. That person that we delegated to can catch it, I can catch it, that's okay. But decide what you can delegate, typically things that only you can do, you want to keep, but other things you need to delegate, you need to trust. Ernest Hemingway said, the best way to find out if you can trust somebody is to actually trust them. Something else I want to share with you is, if you have to prioritize all the things you're currently busy with, say from, let's simplify it, number 1 to 10, would anybody even bother if you cross those number 8, 9s, and 10s off your list? Don't worry about it. Scratch it off your list. Focus on the things where you should be focusing on. Minimizing distractions. I think we all suffer to an extent with a little bit of ADHD, even at an adult level. And we need to focus more in what we do. I love this quote from Bert Lawrence. He says, if it ain't broke or broken, don't fix it. So focus your attention on where your organization really needs it to be, where you can add value. And I love the inverse of this quote, which says, if it ain't okay, then fix it. So we can't afford to have so many distractions. And on a daily basis, we need to try our best to avoid those. I want to share something else that I believe has a massive impact on our workloads. and that is not to fall behind of your responsibilities. Do those ring a bell? You're going to say to me, geez, Hekkie, do you need to remind us of Efiling, which is around the corner? My idea is not to make you feel guilty. But the point is, we've got all these, on a personal level as well, we've got all these responsibilities. And if we don't focus on getting them out of the way when we should, then we find ourselves in trouble. Because, oh, sure, but now I need to get somebody else to go and sort out my e-filing or go and sort out the renewal of my driver's license. If you don't have the discipline to get these things done in time in order to get it out of the way as quick as possible, as opposed to consuming time or monetary resources in terms of appointing somebody else to sort it out for you, if your deadline for SARS e-filing, let's just use that example again, is 22nd of November, move it in your diary to the 22nd of October. By doing that, if you overrun by 2 weeks, you're still actually 2 weeks early. And that's maybe some way you can use to address this issue as part of normalizing your workload. Dealing with things quickly and decisively. Love this quote from Mason Cooley. He said, procrastination makes easy things hard and hard things harder. The other day, I had a conversation with somebody that I mentor. And she's told me, Hekkie, I, especially if it's an important email to the MD or the CEO, I look at that mail 7 times. Guys, talking about procrastination. So I finally got it to a point to say, listen, let's call her Jane. I said, Jane, type the mail, read it another time, and at maximum, run it through Grammarly, which I find very, very useful as a guy that does not speak English as my first language. And then you send it and force yourself and create that personal boundary that then I send it regardless, and you should be fine and getting into that habit. Something else is, it's acceptable to say no. It's absolutely acceptable to say no. Sometimes we want to be the nice guy. Does it sound familiar? Steve Jobs said, it's only by saying no that you can concentrate on the things that are really important. The reality is, your time, sir, ma'am, is not my time, and vice versa. If you say no all the time, then probably something is wrong. But certainly, if you say no sometimes, after you've evaluated the situation, it's absolutely acceptable. All these things that I've shared with you now, I've found that most of it I can very nicely deal with when I use the Eisenhower Matrix as a tool. Just to summarize this part of the presentation. And what he's basically saying is, and what Stephen Covey also said in his book, 7 Habits, things that are urgent but not important, delegate it, quadrant 3 stuff. Things that are not urgent and not important, why do you even bother? Take it off your list. Yes, sometimes you're going to do crisis mode stuff that are urgent and also important, but certainly where you need to put your effort in moving all your tasks that you're busy with into is quadrant 2. Things that are not urgent, but important. In other words, you can start planning to do those important things in advance, way before the deadline. And what he's calling that quadrant 2 is, Covey says, that's the heart of effective personal management. I started using the tool quite effectively, and I suggest that you have a look into it. So when you tackle all these things that I've mentioned to you now, amongst others, as far as normalizing your workload is concerned, only half the battle is won. So fair enough, I flattened my workload curve. And by the way, I like to put things in a graph so to explain it better. But the reality is that your personal capacity, if you are lucky, will still hover around the same spot where it was. And in reality, it will actually drop, which puts you into a crash and burn situation again, which you obviously want to try and avoid it at all costs. The reality is that will happen if you don't look at the other side, which we're going to get to now, in terms of also addressing your personal capacity, in addition to normalizing your workload. So let's have a look at that. Increasing my personal capacity. Abraham Lincoln said, if I had 6 hours to chop down a tree, I'll spend the first 4 hours sharpening the axe. Ask yourself, when last did you sharpen your proverbial pencil? Because we need to do that. Otherwise, we can't increase our personal capacity. One of the very effective ways that I use is to charge my life batteries. And I want to ask each one of you, ladies and gentlemen, what are your life batteries? In other words, those things that you know you should be doing frequently that makes you tick, that gives you a boost, and that assists you to cope better with life. Well, my dad taught me two things, and I know some of you might debate this not to be the case, but he taught me two very good things. And the first thing was to ride things on two wheels. And that is my motorcycle, by the way. It's just not the same color. The second thing that I do to de-stress or to charge my life batteries is I'm an open water swimmer. And those are the things that I know if I don't do those frequently, if I don't do those often enough, then that line graph or that line of personal capacity starts to drop. And you might say to me, Hekkie, you've got no clue where I'm working. It's rough stuff. We're busy with project. Now I say, it's fine. I understand if you say you're too busy, but then box cleverly. Then what you do, as opposed to, in my example, spending an hour in the pool and taking my flippers and my paddles and everything with, I was going to spend half an hour. Or if I don't have any time to do that even, because it's so really, really crunch time and busy, then I take the dog for a walk with my best friend in life, which is, by the way, not the dog. It's my dear wife, Marley. Getting vitamin D, spending time with my wife, and giving myself and my wife some exercise. Another thing that I think it's important that allows us, and in my experience allows me to increase my personal capacity, is when I look at my fortnightly rolling plan. So what I do is typically every day I'll look at what's 2 weeks what's 2 weeks ahead. And by doing that, the creative juices of my mind is starting to work out ways to ensure that I meet those deadlines and those commitments. Plan your work and work your plan. Otherwise, you're thinking to yourself, what is hiding around the corner that might bite me? Practicing mindfulness, something that was very foreign to me for a very long time. Our friends, especially if you're a biker like I am, and really need to stay very far away from taxis. If a taxi pulls up in front of me now, I apply mindfulness. Try and stay not in that moment for long, if I even have to go there, in terms of being annoyed, for lack of a better word. I use mindfulness to center myself very, very quickly and to move on. As opposed to 10 years ago, it would have lingered in my mind and I would have been furious for a too long time. Breathing exercises. Nobody would even know if you are stressed. You're sitting right at your desk. Breathing in, holding it, breathing out. Why? Because it allows you to take your mind off the stuff that you're stressed about, stuff that you're busy with, that you're battling about. And it allows you to regenerate yourself and get the energy to carry on again. So other things that you might try out: meditation. Now some of you might think, what's this guy talking about? Yoga, Pilates. I want to invite you, and I want to actually challenge you, if I may, to be brave, to go and try out some of these things you previously might have thought, cheapest, no, that's for somebody else. Try it out. You might be pleasantly surprised in terms of what impact it has, positive impact on your lives. Also, in order to increase your personal capacity as part of coping better. Reflecting more. Now, self-reflection, according to the Oxford Online Dictionary, says it's serious thought about one's character and actions. Now, why is it important to reflect? Well, it allows you to take stock of your life and to see, where am I going? And how can I improve my life? And you can reflect in different ways. You don't need to do that on your office desk, wherever you work, like a Rafiki in the Lion King movie, and reflect in that manner. There's simple ways of reflecting. If you're going to my garage, you'll find that calendar on my wall before I exit my garage door to get into my kitchen and into my house. So when I come from work, office 5, 6 o'clock in the afternoon, I would take a highlighter, and orange, by the way, represents red, and I would quickly highlight the date. On the date, I would say, was this a red day, orange day, or was it a green day? If it was a green day, I'm happy with the way I behaved, the way I thought, the way I interacted with my colleagues, or with people that I'm surrounded with. And if it wasn't a great day, and there was something that bugged me about the way I showed up, I would mark it as an orange day. Allows me for quick reflection, 30 seconds, 40 seconds. And then I tell myself it was an orange day, but the next time I'll fix it and I won't do the same mistake. So achieving excellence is really about lowering your workload, actively working on it, and increasing your personal capacity, and making sure that those two lines are as far apart on a continuous basis through doing, amongst other things, what I've explained to you and what I've shared with you, because that's where you will be victorious. So I hope that assisted you in increasing your personal productivity going forward. And I want to just finally leave you with a note. I know we started off about 7 minutes late, I think, so if it's okay if we overshoot by 3 minutes, I hope you don't mind. But just in closing, I want to share with you something that I've been thinking of quite a lot recently. And that is that the whole thing around hard skills versus soft skills. Now, hard skills, as we know, we get a degree to become an accountant or an engineer or a doctor. And in that way, we get certified to be equipped and to be able to demonstrate hard skills. But what certifies us from a soft skills point of view? You don't get a degree in soft skills, or do you? No, you don't. So I want to encourage you, also in terms of the content that I've shared with you today, is to exercise. To exercise, to get better at these things and to master it. Actively work on it. You don't become a Springbok lock or a Roger Federer as a tennis player by accident. Similarly, as far as our soft skills are concerned, also what we shared today, we have to practice it day in and day out. And at some point, you're going to get to the point where you then say, I've mastered it. Tick, and I can move on to the next soft skill to master. Self-leadership, after all, is the practice of intentionally, not by chance, not by accident, intentionally influencing our thinking, our feeling, and our behavior in order to become better. If these things that I've shared with you interest you, I've published a book on it last year, which you can get at various outlets or sign copy from our website. Please register for our next free Friday lunch webinar on the last Friday of every month. And next month, I'm sharing with you the importance of building personal brand equity, especially in a post-COVID VUCA world that we operate in. And folks, that's the end. I'm going to stop sharing now, and I'm going to ask you to please share your thoughts. And if you wouldn't mind taking your cameras or switching your cameras on, I would really appreciate it. So I can see some faces, and I'm so glad there are many more faces than before I started sharing with you. And I would love to hear your thoughts, or if you want to ask me a question, please fire away.
Sure. Thanks very much, Hekkie, for just listening to you for that half an hour has already put me in a frame of unbusy. And that for me is just, I mean, like, it doesn't take a lot to actually just settle down and just listen to some of those practical tools. But the one thing that stood out for me is, I think the quadrant is the fact that we play in the other three areas where the planning actually is the most important part of our job. But we actually think, or I think, it's the other areas that's important. And I suppose I spend less time in planning, but I spend more time in reacting, which is problematic as it is. So that for me was just a good reflection.
Yeah, great, Johnny. Appreciate that. C.S. Lewis said, you can't go back and change the beginning, but you can certainly start where you are and change the ending. And I think that's the positive challenge for all of us to make sure we do something about it and change it. Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you very much. I don't see any other hands.
Maybe just a quick question from my end. Thank you very, very much. I wanted to just get a sense, and I think just to latch on to what Jody had mentioned, a lot of what we saw there are things we potentially know. So it's known, but it's not action. And if I think about some of our delegates, especially the cliche of a lot of busy people being senior up in the ranks, we're finding ourselves just being busy just by the sake of it. So a lot of the organizations are focusing on younger talent, so junior management, middle management, people that potentially you won't imagine to have very busy schedules, however, but who information like this is critical to land. Have you had, I suppose, success with landing some of these concepts with younger people? That's the first one. And then the second one is more just to understand how you'd almost, I know this is very difficult, I suppose, but how do you somehow, through what you provide, give support in terms of actioning. So for example, next week, if we were to follow up with Jody and myself, like, did we go and sign up for Pilates, or did we not, or did we go drive our motorcycle, or, you know what I mean? So it's more just tools or a mechanism of supporting some of the actions, only because the actions are so knowledgeable or known, but it's often the known things, obviously, that we don't get to practice. Yeah. Thanks.
Go on, appreciate that. Thank you very much. To answer your first question, my seriousness, for lack of a better word, started, as far as self-leadership is concerned, started when I was in Standard 8 in 1986. That's a long time ago, when I read Norman Vincent Peale's The Power of Positive Thinking. The reality is, I think people at 16, 17 years old, as I've experienced, start to think about these things. Part of what we do as an organization, pro bono, is we do WILA, Youth Leadership Accelerator, where I give some of those books that I just showed you, that I published free to prefects or newly elected prefects at schools, high schools, and that I share this content with them in a summarized version. Because, and I know that's not focused on your junior people in your organizations, but what I want to say is that that's where we actually should start thinking about these things. Because if we can address the things that we are battling with then already, I mean, our life can be so much better, not only for our own sake, but also for the people around us, including our families. Does it make sense? So the point is that I would encourage people as young as that, and also young people in organizations, to get serious about self-leadership, get self-help books. And that gets me to my next question, or to your next question, rather. The second one is, ultimately, it's about choice. It's about individual choice and discipline. We need to make the right choices, including, I am going to take what Hekkie said today seriously. And in that choice, I'm going to follow through with discipline the actions to practice and to exercise what I referred to earlier, these things, in order to benefit from it and to gain from it. And do that on a continuous basis. And Colvin, like I said earlier, I think the mistake we make is we don't reflect enough. Because if we say to ourselves, I will, on a Saturday morning, when the family is still asleep, and I have my cup of coffee, I will reflect for half an hour in terms of where am I going with my life, and am I happy with what I'm seeing, and where do I need to tweak as part of getting serious enough about it in order to address those things, if that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks for that, appreciate it. I see there's nothing else in the chat box as far as questions are concerned. Yeah, we don't need to drag it out. Ladies and gentlemen,
Shaman's hand is up. Sorry, Hekkie.
Sorry, I didn't see that hand. Oh, there we go. Shaman, sorry, I didn't check the hand.
No problem, no problem.
Go for it.
So on side of my desk, I've got the calendar with all my upcoming courses that's coming up.
Yeah.
And I find that's a good reminder to see what's coming up. So when you mentioned your fortnightly plan, your rolling fortnightly plan, can you tell me more about that and how that works?
Yeah, so literally what I do is every day, and look, now and again, look at my plan for the next month, okay, or for the next year for that matter. But part of what I do as a habit is I would, a couple of times a week, I will sit and I will go through the main important things specifically in my calendar. And getting to that, Jody, what Jody also mentioned, that quadrant 2 of plan on the Eisenhower Matrix, that is not urgent at this point, things in advance. It's not that urgent, but it's important. But Shaman, that allows me to start acting upon it and start actively doing something about it. And also, I promise you, in your subconscious mind, if you do that, then your creative juices start to work to find ways of making sure that you can conform to whatever is part of that future plan. And you can decide, it doesn't need to be a fortnightly plan, it can be a monthly plan. But long enough so that you know, listen, I've got these priorities for the next week. But next week, when I do it in a week's time again, then obviously week 2 becomes week 1. And if I work that plan, then I'm never in trouble. Then I would hardly ever find myself in a quadrant 1 situation where it's urgent and it's important, and you want to run around and you don't know, like a headless chicken, you don't know what to do because you are so stressed and so anxious that you don't want to be there, if that makes sense. So all these things are intertwined. And if you pull the one lever and you start addressing it, then you will find a half other lever gets pulled in a good way as well. And that's the beauty of it. If you start to intentionally, like definition says, focusing on these things. Thanks for that.
Thank you.
I think on that note, if there's no other questions, I would like to say thank you very much for joining me today. I look forward to sending you the invitations, and feel free to forward it on to other people. I actually encourage that you register for it to get your details as well, but that's not a critical thing. Robin, you've got a question. If that can be the last one with the field, go for it. Oh, you just did a clap. It wasn't a hand. Sorry.
Yes, thanks.
Robin,
Thanks, Hekkie. This was a very good presentation, and I just wanted to say thank you very, very much. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and definitely a number of learnings that have come through this. As simplistic as it might seem, I think we just tend to make everything a bit harder, but this was really insightful and easy to implement quickly. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Robin. Much appreciated. And just a reminder, if you want a copy of the video, please mail me, and then I will get it through to you via WeTransfer. I wish you all the best. Have a great weekend. And yeah, thanks once again for joining me, and looking forward to seeing you soon.
Bye.
Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.